can a component library be a design system? And that was something that right now the poll is pretty evenly split on LinkedIn, where 50% of the people were saying yes, it can be, 50% were saying no. So I'd like to give that question to you, and see what you think about that.
Okay. You want that answer right now?
Yeah, right now.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So the answer for me there is that in the sense that I believe a design system is the agreement of a team about the way that design is meant to be portrayed, yes, it
Mm,
can be a design system because you've codified those components as agreements that are going to be used across the platform.
yeah.
What's missing, or what people might feel uneasy about, is that if you have, a whole bunch of Lego bricks but don't know how to, build anything with them, what good is that, right? Because Lego is a system, it's absolutely a system. That's what everyone knows it as. But the thing is that you could technically build anything with it. You can do what they call illegal moves or illegal building techniques
Yep.
inside of Lego that are not things that Lego would really want you to do. It's
Sure.
the exact same thing with, design systems. If there's no guidance about when to use a particular component or otherwise, then people could do some things that are unintended and will potentially result in bad experiences overall. So certainly the system that we probably would know and be more comfortable with is one that additionally has guidance about how to use the resources. But that's the thing, is that from the smaller kind of definition of just being an agreement, yeah,
Mhm.
a component that everyone agrees on, that would be a system, sure.
Yeah, it's like one of those, it goes back to that old adage of like every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square kind of thing,
That
where it's
sounds
like
right. Yeah.
can be,
Mhm.
if you take that step. Awesome. Well, we are officially live on other platforms, so thank you very much for kicking us off with that. I would like to go ahead and welcome everybody into our show. This is the Design Annotation Live. It's Zeppelin's community interview series where we get to talk to people who are designing and building beautiful products. And today we have with us Donnie. Donnie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do. We'd love to get to know you.
Sure. My name is Donnie D'Amato. I have been a design system architect for a while now. I am the founder and chief architect of a company called Design Systems House, where we're dedicated to the future of design systems. And yeah, I love this stuff. I'm a real big part of the community. Actually, I'll be in several conferences in the next month. Between here, virtually New York and Brighton in the UK. But really excited to chat about this kind of stuff. I really, love sharing the hot takes that I think I'm known for. So I'm really excited to dive into some.
Awesome. We're happy to kick off your circuit of appearances at all these different places. So congratulations to you. Very excited to see what you'll do here. I really want to know too a little bit about more of like what's your day to day look like at Design Systems House. Like what are you doing for the future of design systems?
Sure. So the focus for the Design Systems House really is talking about the future. It's all of the stuff that a normal practitioner that would be doing design systems at any particular company wouldn't have the resources to really dive into, because they have, stakeholders and deadlines and Jira tickets that they need to wade through, right? So instead of worrying about all that stuff, what we're able to do here is do a lot of R&D about what the most effective way of providing a particular solution in the design system space might be. And it's really critical, for the design systems house, for that solution to be as universal as possible, meaning
Mm,
that it is something that if you were to put resources into, should certainly be successful for your organization. Again, if you were to put the resources in that. Now, resources is a loaded word there, because resources, of course, talks about personnel, time, money, all that kind of stuff, and also you know a paradigm shift of the way that we think about design. And
mm,
that's very critical into the work that I'm doing, because a lot of the stuff that I've come up with is very different than the way that we've been doing design traditionally. And I think some of us have seen bits and pieces of that in the industry, just from the introduction of design tokens and how they support dark mode. The way that we do that which most people in the industry have kind of recognized, is wildly different than the way that we would have assigned color to a UI back 10 years ago.
Mm. Okay, awesome. I'm very excited about that. And for those of for those of the viewers who want to learn more about what you do, the URL is just designsystemhouse dot, or
So
what's
the
the,
easiest
where
way
can I
to,
find out more?
find the website is ds.house, but
Perfect.
it should redirect to with designsystems.house
Uh-huh.
and designsystemshouse.com. I think all of those should redirect to DS House. But obviously,
Perfect.
with 7 characters and a period, you can't go wrong. It's pretty simple.
Shouldn't get too lost, and
Yeah,
you
that's
have
pretty
a lot
easy.
of fail safes in there too to make
Yeah,
sure they get to where they need to go.
that's right.
Kathleen is tuned in on LinkedIn. She says that your hot takes are the best, so I'm really excited to dive into that as well. If you could tell us a little bit about your journey in design systems too, sort of like where you were, how you got into it, maybe if you have any advice for folks that are looking to get into the field. What would that be for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I love my story and how I kind of fell into this thing. The general gist is, well, I mean, I could go way far back, but I won't go that far back. I'm going to start with like my first startup that I was at, where I was both the designer and the developer, the front end developer,
Mm-hmm.
in that startup, because there was only 12 of us and they were working without a designer. It was basically their product manager sending off a whole bunch of balsamics and hoping that something would be looking good at the end of the day. But because I came in there showing them a whole bunch of code pens that looked good. They were like, "Hey, it looks like you could design and develop at the same time." I said, "Doesn't everybody?" Not realizing that no, not everybody does that. But yeah, basically, I was able to design the experience through code, and once the PM gave me the thumbs up, it would be in the code base within like 15 minutes because it's working. We did it already. It's done. So that was really a great taste of the power of what we now kind of call design engineering.
Hmm.
Back then, I called it UX engineering because that was kind of what the role was being called from some of the larger places. Eventually, I got hired at Compass, and at Compass, I had huge imposter syndrome. They were working with Angular. They had this uh, what is it? Code check-in called Garrett. All this stuff that I've never seen before. So luckily, the new UX director was just hired, and we were on a lot of the same onboarding. So I posted her. I said, "Look, are you interested in potentially having an engineer on your team? Because I could do some prototyping for you, maybe build some sketch plugins. Who knows? But maybe it would be beneficial for you to do that."
Hmm.
And eventually, we actually got that approved, and I was the first UX engineer at Compass, which was again for me just to jump out of Angular because I was scared as hell of whatever the hell Angular. And this is Angular 1, by the way, so I don't know what's going on in there. So I was able to do prototyping and CodePen and all that kind of stuff. So designers would make some mock and sketch and ship it off to me, and we would use it for user research and testing.
Okay.
So the users would go in front of it and like actually use and learn from it. And because of that, I'm doing this rapid iteration of these things. I needed like my own component library. I needed something to like pull from very quickly in order to build this stuff very quickly. And kind of word got around that like, hey, there's this thing that's basically can be used in anything because I'm just building HTML and CSS more or less. You could just plop it into your stuff and it actually look like Compass. And that's the general gist of how that kind of started out, was like, hey, Donnie's kind of supporting this whole component library thing. We can probably start using it. I was like, yeah, sure. Sounds like a great idea. Um, so eventually we got some support behind it. It took a little while to get the right leadership to allow for that to happen, but eventually it was a proper design system team that had designers, engineers on it. I even had a content writer, and even had a PM itself by the time I left, which was excellent.
Yeah.
And I realized in that time, I found a whole bunch of community members, but I found out in that time that what really gravitated me toward design systems is that inside of a particular feature in an organization, I felt uncomfortable if any other feature didn't look like my feature, right? Like, why do they have to be different? Especially from a user standpoint. From the user
Hmm.
standpoint, I trust that I'm in the same place as long as everything looks the same, right? Behaves the same and interacts the same. If things are ever so slightly different, that's when warning lights go on and the trust kind of starts to dwindle. So it's very important from a system level perspective perspective and an experience perspective, that everything is really cohesive. It all kind of makes sense together. And without that platform level vision, it's really hard to keep everything the same. So that's why I felt a lot more, I guess, comfortable looking at the platform and going, okay, all the buttons are the same, all the inputs are the same. That's great. Whatever your feature is doing, whatever, I don't care. Right. As long as everything is the same, that's
Mhm.
what is important for me. And I think it's important for the users, less, less of the ego.
I like that a lot. I think especially the part about establishing that level of trust with the actual user is huge. And I think because I think so often now we've run a few different polls, talked to a lot of users, and I think one of the biggest issues folks are still facing when it comes to design systems is just getting buy-in. And so if you can almost like reframe it as, no, this is for the user more than anybody else, so that they have a good experience across the board. I think that's a huge piece in that too. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's very interesting to think about and look back
Yeah,
on for sure.
100%. I mean, the thing is I know you could probably ask any design system maintainer out there. I don't think any design system maintainer really has an opinion about the way that something should look,
Mhm.
as long as everyone agrees that it should look like this, right? That's the thing that we're always trying to do, is we're just trying to get the agreement. And those are the things that are the most challenging because everybody has an opinion. So the less of that challenge that comes in there, and the more agreement that we get in. If you want the buttons to be yellow, go ahead, have a good time, make them yellow buttons. We don't care, but we just want to make sure that we're all agreeing that they all should be yellow.
Yeah. Awesome. That's fantastic. And I think that's still even something just moving beyond design systems too, just between that design and development. That I feel like there's still so much perceived friction and conflict between the two disciplines. When in reality, it's always like we're working towards the same thing. We're trying to build the same thing together. Let's come together and have this shared language so we can actually see and understand what each other's doing too. So I think that's super important. I think design systems that all the folks that I've spoken with are really a way to like bridge that gap and bridge that communication there too. So awesome to know that you're pioneering forward with the future of that too. I'm very excited to hear more about that later. One of the things that I wanted to ask you too is being a designer or a developer in like a design system team is different than say like a feature team, yet they often have to work together. Can you share more about those differences and like how they come together, especially for those maybe who have yet to scale their design system work?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I think the one of the best ways to explain is actually something that was going on at Compass, because it seems kind of unique, but it's something that I hear about in the community a little bit. And what I want to mention is that not everything needs to be something that is like inside of a component library. We're talking about like the difference between like a feature designer developer or the design system designer developer. And what usually the difference ends up being is that that feature designer developer is a person that's working on a particular feature, a particular slice of the entire platform, where that designer developer on the design systems team, they're looking at the entire thing, but not looking at any one feature.
Mm.
And there's a gray area in there that I want to kind of talk about, because Dan Wall, in one of his talks, I think it's Your Next Component or Your First Component, one of them, a really great talk. I highly recommend it. But one of the things that he recommends in there is to, as a design system team, kind of attack something that's really challenging,
Mm.
such that you show that you have value as a team that's going to be helping out other features. One of the example that he provides is creating the map component for Uber because it provides value. I actually have a inverse kind of thought in that, which aligns directly to Compass. So Compass has a listing team. It's very specific to the way that a real estate listing, is presented on their website. And there is also a listing card. Now, that listing card represents the listing as an entity across the site, right? So we're talking about in search, in the way that a collection looks like, the way that you put it in your market material, it appears everywhere. Now, because it appears everywhere, you would assume that it's a design system component, but it's not. And the reason it's not is because the listings team is the experts on how a listing is meant to be presented, right? So that means that that card is built off of design system components, right? We're talking about the title, we're talking about buttons in there,
Mhm.
the overall shape of the card, maybe even the image, and that's container, sure. But that composition needs to be the same across all of those, platform or all those features, right? So but because they're the experts in the way that that's supposed to be presented, it's their card. They own that, and they are responsible for the distribution of that. So that gray area that I'm talking about there is that's entirely accurate, right? And I think about this as well as design systems maintainers being less about building components and actually being more about an infrastructure in which components can be
Mm,
built on, and then
mhm,
a marketplace could be introduced such that anyone can find any component, right? I actually do envision a world where me as a design system maintainer, I'm not in charge of the button. I'm in charge of the infrastructure in which the button exists on. And then someone, whoever the first person who needs a button needs to create one, puts it on the marketplace and therefore is allowed to then distribute it, across the organization, with some caveats about who owns what in that kind of way, because I can imagine that there's going to be standards that come from the design system, but
mhm.
the actual like implementation comes from the folks that actually need the button or need the listing card or expect to own these particular components. But there's a lot of work and thought that needs to go further in that direction. But certainly the separation, of course, is that focus on the feature and that individual user for the that designer developer in there,
Mhm.
versus the designer developer from the platform that's looking at everything overall and making sure that each feature, from a visual standpoint and I guess from an interaction standpoint, is consistent across.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to keep following you to hear your hot takes, to hear your future looking things on all of the world of design systems, because I think that conversation is super important, especially considering so much of the conversation now is focused on like the regular things that everybody has to deal with, which is like, how do I get buy-in? How do I increase adoption? What are these things? Whereas you're like, no, we need to be thinking, 10 years in the future, where do we want it to go so we can keep building the things that we want. So that's awesome to hear. I'm really excited for that and excited to see hopefully like a resurgence, if you will, in the design system space where more folks are getting into it. And that's been something too that we've been hearing a lot. Folks in the community are often asking like, how do you break into design systems? This seems like something that I'm interested in. You, of course, have a very unique perspective being one of the design unicorns or the design engineers of today. Does it really take that understanding of both sides, or is it really something different in your opinion? Like, what do you think it takes to be successful in design systems?
I mean, I'm going to drop a hot take on top of that, is that I think designers should know code. Now, hold on a second. Hold on a second before the pitch starts
I
starts
was
to be
gonna say.
thrown. Okay, hold on. What I mean by that, just as a clarity's sake, is that it's the same way as that a painter would do much better on a canvas that they are familiar with in terms of the way that it's meant to interact, right?
Mhm.
Some paints don't work on some canvases. So the more that you know about the canvas and the materials that you're working with, the better your excuse me, the better result that you're going to get. So it's the exact same sort of thing when it comes to digital product design, where the more that you know your materials, the more that you know about the web or about the platform that you're designing for, the better output you're going to end up getting, right? So I highly believe that designers that are designing for the web should know how the web works.
Mm,
Very, very important, right? Folks that don't know how the web works are going to be designing things that they think they've seen before, but in
yeah.
reality, could be awful experiences. I mean, you could look at practically any design awards site. It is absolutely beautiful and practically unusable. Every last one of them, right? So that's the thing that's pretty critical in there, is that you have basically a collection of people who make beautiful art and or beautiful looking designs, but making them actually function for the world is a much more um, I guess, involved practice, right?
Mhm.
One that kind of requires you to know code a little bit. You kind of need to know a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS. And I'm saying no, I'm not saying actually necessarily do.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, learning through doing is a really powerful thing. I'm also not telling designers to become developers. I'm not saying that either, right? But I'm definitely saying to dabble, right? That's super important. Um, and that kind of stuff does I guess, move folks that are interested in it toward systems level stuff. Now, I get a lot of folks that come and contact me about, how to get in design systems. And admittedly, the way that you do that is, I think, through starting with an individual product, right? That product saying, okay, I know the ins and outs of this particular product and the way that it goes across and a platform or what have you, and all the ins and outs of that stuff. I think between learning about a particular feature and how that gets built out, and then also understanding the nitty gritty about the individual parts of a button, the individual parts of an input, how those things get composed, having a inherent interest in the way that those compositions actually go down is very important. And just wanting to be an advocate for the user, I think, is also super important in this as well. If that's something that you're interested in, and look, there's people who claim that they're advocates for the user but aren't,
Mhm.
and I'm calling you out right now, all of yous out there, okay? That, oh well, I think the user would blah blah blah. It's bullshit, right? There are patterns that are out there that have been tried and true that we should be aligned to, not this novel stuff just to make a name for yourself out there is not really the key for the user experience, right? There's stuff that people already know. So sticking to the guns about what we've kind of figured out when it comes to user experience is going to take you a long way versus reinventing what you're doing in design systems. We don't need a new navigational pattern. The ones that we use with links totally work, and we should continue to see that for our users.
That's fantastic. Kathleen shares your hot take. She says, and developers should know how to design. So, vice versa, go in the opposite way as well, too. And that's also something another one of our guests that we had on set as well, too, is she was like, I think that developers often do make good designers and the other way around, too, because you're already doing, 50% of that work. If you can understand a little bit more about what the technical limitations are, like you mentioned, the artist in the canvas and understanding your medium, too, I think that'll help advance the field quite a bit. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of that now with the advent and the integration of AI into these platforms, into being able to easily translate design to code and being able to really understand this and build an app without even having any coding knowledge. So, what do you think about AI in the mix of everything? And do you think that it's a positive thing that'll help advance the field, or do you have another hot take
I
on this
have
segment?
so many hot takes when it comes to the AI stuff. So I had a blog post that I talked about this a couple of times in a couple of other podcasts as well, and I do believe that there's potentially a world in here that kind of removes all of the work that we're doing in design systems. It's a little bit of a scary thing.
Mhm.
And I talk about this from the Rabbit R1. It was the device that they launched
Yes.
earlier on this year, and that claimed that it was going to be able to, do lots of stuff, including be able to speak to it in order to do several different tasks. One of the things they were talking about was, to call an Uber basically from speaking to it.
Mhm.
And everyone's like, that's not going to happen. What's wild, whatever. Or other people were like, that's going to be amazing, etc. Now, imagine that a person would no longer have to use a graphical user interface in order to achieve the goal that they're trying to get to, right? Now, granted, yes, the Rabbit has a little bit of a user interface in order to confirm stuff, but minimal in comparison to the vastness of an Uber interface, right?
Mhm.
So again, imagine if we've completely cut out the entire graphical user interface part of us interacting with technology. Where are design systems then? At least the traditional ones that we're working with net right now,
Mhm.
right? Clearly, there's going to be more involved when it comes to a voice system, right? The way that we interact with that way, or physical parts of systems that we might need to reconnect with. So there's going to be maybe a death of design systems, and I'm not talking about that being tomorrow or the next 5 or 10 years, but there might be a world where again everything could be voice activated, such that things just happen without a graphical user interface. And I'm not also talking about the extreme where there is no graphical user interface. Certainly there will be things that are going to be more useful as a graphical user interface. But there are things like the Uber situation that might be more akin to something that doesn't need one, right? In fact, I mean, I used to call for a cab on the phone. That's what I used to do back in the
Yeah.
day. So it's not far fetched to see this come back.
That is fascinating. Because I think too, just even aside from it, I was thinking I was like, oh, the rabbit's going to be one of those things where like 20 years down the road, if you have one of the actual devices, like that's going to go for big money on eBay.
I got it.
Do you really?
Oh yeah,
Fantastic.
I was first launch. I got it.
Well, that is exciting. You've got yourself a collector's item now.
Oh
That's
yeah, I don't
really
use it. I just turned it on for like the first time because someone asked me about its AI capabilities in comparison to these glasses, because these glasses also have AI in them. Go figure.
okay.
And they wanted the comparison between the two, so I fired it up, and it took like 6 hours for it to update because I haven't turned it on in months.
Things will get AI devices maybe will get better. We'll see. Who knows? That's amazing though. I'm very curious to know too here, and we're nearing the end of it. So I wanted to know too if you have any like if you have like a top prediction for where the field of design systems is headed, aside from the fact that maybe it'll go all voice. GUIs aren't necessary anymore. What is your main prediction, I guess, over the next 5 years on where you see design systems going?
Well, I'm hoping that everyone reads my book in the next 5 years once it's actually out. I'm writing
Perfect.
a book on UI theming, kind of just generally speaking. A lot of the things that I've been talking about in the community most recently. I was at Clarity last year that kind of launched the whole idea. But I think if folks are passionate about the ways that we express um, ourselves from a design standpoint, but also want to have a structure behind that expression. I think folks that are interested in that kind of uh, concept of a plan could be very interested in this book. So I'm hoping people read, of course, the book, but just generally speaking, from overall in terms of the community kind of aspect or the practice at all
Mhm.
overall, I'm certainly hoping that folks do follow standards out there, focus on accessibility, focus on inclusion,
Mm,
localization, performance, all those things that are outside of the craft of design,
yeah.
and really try to hone in on more inclusive design and less universal design. I think that's what I'm hoping that folks kind of do in the next couple of years, sooner rather than later.
That's fantastic. I think too the it goes back originally to one of the points that you had mentioned too about design systems as a whole aren't really focused on just one feature. They're focused on making everything better. So across the entire product, and I feel like what you have said just about the community is about like making design better for everybody, making it easier to have accessible components, making it easier to build with these things in mind too. So I'm looking forward to that. I think you're leading the charge with your hot takes. So thank you very much on that one. I'm excited to see where that goes, and very excited to see when the book comes out too. So we'll have to maybe have you back on, see if we'll do a then versus now to see if any of your hot takes have changed substantially after you've done this one here too. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Those were all of the questions that I had for you. I've got a few rapid fire questions for you, and then we'll jump into my favorite portion of the show where I put your design skills to the test. But I first got a few rapid fire questions for you here. If you had to guess, how many rectangles have designers created?
I mean, billions. But, a Google of rectang. I mean, probably too many of those, but lots of rectangles. That's what everything is. It's actually just the rectangle in the web, at least. So yeah,
I'm always curious to see where people fall on that. We've had answers all the way from like 2 million to like a gagillion or some, some
that sounds
like
accurate. Yeah, Gagillion. I'll go for that. Let's do that one.
we've got two for that. So once we figure out, once the study comes out, I'm sure the number will have tripled by then. But we'll see there. If you could describe any design systems in just 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
um, Agreement, mm, inclusive,
Mhm.
and what's a good last one? Challenging.
Ooh, okay. Agreement, inclusive, and challenging. I like those a lot. Shows there's a lot to do, and we've already come a long way, but still a lot of good things to come. Very very nice. My last question for you here is if you could describe yourself using just 1 word, what would that word be?
Controversial.
Controversial. I like I like it. That's how you've stood the test of time. You're still here, releasing all the books, doing the speaking circuits, because of your hot takes, which of course Kathleen is still here. Kevin's also here too. He mentioned Carl Sagan level rectangles.
I believe
Lots
it.
lots of fun things here. We have now come to my very favorite portion of the show, where I so lovingly call it "So You Think You're a Designer," where we put your design skills to the test and ask all of our esteemed guests to recreate the Zeppelin logo in just 2 minutes using a web-based version of Microsoft Paint. So Donnie, whenever you are ready, feel free to share your screen, and I will start the counter as soon as the first pixel hits the canvas. So you've got some time to orient yourself in there, familiarize yourself again.
Okay.
But you've also told me there might be a fun story coming here soon.
So
I'm
there
very
is a little
excited
bit
for
of a
that.
story that I'll talk about before I hit the canvas here.
Of course.
Basically, how I we talked about how I got my start. How I got my start in digital design was Microsoft Paint in Windows 3.1,
Uh-huh.
and I was doing pixel art with exactly this back. Oh God, 25 years ago,
Uh-huh.
right? 30 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
This is where I lived for like weeks, months at a time, and in fact, I would be like going into the view bitmap thing and like really seeing every single pixel.
Wow.
And I made like an entire portfolio with that, and I submitted it to like top high schools for graphic design.
Yeah.
So that's where I start. All right. So when the pixel hits, right? So let's go.
Of course, yeah. You've got some time to that. That's
Okay.
amazing. I've always been curious to know too, because one of the questions I always ask as well too is like, if you had to do all of your design work for the rest of the week in this tool, could you do it? And everybody's always like, absolutely not. I can't do this. And whereas you're like,
Honestly,
hey,
I
I
I probably could. I probably could. I could probably do it. I mean, it would take me a little while to get myself back, situated again, but yeah, I probably could because I did some amazing stuff. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. It was awesome.
of course,
Like we're talking like gradients and shit. All right, let's go ahead and start it up. I'm gonna go ahead
perfect,
and do my first thing here, which is one of these things.
fantastic.
We're gonna do this. I'm gonna copy, paste,
Oh,
make a couple of these, and you're like, why is it blue? And we're gonna I think it's blue, right? Because I'm actually color deficient.
okay.
Um, so let's see here. I want this light blue here. I want this blue here. And then I want this blue here. Okay, perfect.
Wow.
Now we're going to do this. We're going to cut these in half. Delete. We're going to move this up
Oh,
here.
wow.
We're
This
going to
is
move this
so good.
up here. Just like that. And then we're going to move this in here. Okay. This a bit bigger. Beautiful. Okay. Next thing. We're going to do this. I think like that was good. Then here, stretched Q. Let's do 20 degrees. That looks good. Copy, paste. We're going to do, oh, I got to do a flip rotate. There it goes. That here.
Wow. This is
Okay.
fantastic. This is like watching watching Da Vinci paint the Mona Lisa here. This is
Now, cut it out, you. Cut it out. Okay, so we got that here. And then I'm going to do this one. Do this like that. We're going to do a little bit of a rotate on this again. Rotate by angle 20. Copy, paste. Flip, rotate. Move this over here. And then we do this. Move this on top.
oh my god.
That looks good. Last thing, we're going to do a little rotate. We'll do negative 20. And then for the final, boom.
Oh wow. Oh my god. This is incredible. You had me fooled this whole time. This is beautiful. I was like, "Oh, a blue logo. This is fantastic." You were like, "No, I've got a plan. Don't you worry." This is
Well, here's the thing. For whatever reason, there's a lot more blues in MS Paint,
uh-huh.
and it would take me way too long for me to like figure out the oranges or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's just invert the whole thing real quick and get all the oranges, you know?
Donnie, truly, truly impressive. I like if you watch this back, my jaw is just like on the
Because I can
ground.
see you. I'm just cooking. That's what I was doing. I was just cooking in here. Yeah, let me just go back to the screen now. Okay, there we go.
Oh,
I can see you.
this is amazing. Yeah, you're welcome to stop sharing your screen. We
Oh,
can
okay, good.
come back over here. I will ask for that because I want that framed. This is fantastic. Well, Donnie, thank you very very much for joining us here today. This was fantastic. That was like one of the most impressive design skills that I've ever seen in Paint. This is like 10 out of 10. You've got the black belt. You are the for all intents and purposes you are the master of Microsoft Paint. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on our show, for sharing all of your hot takes, for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge with us all. If you'd like to, of course, the space is yours, floor is yours. We've got over 120 people tuned in on Twitter. We've got Kathleen and Kevin on LinkedIn, a few other friends, Lillian from Design Ops Assembly as well too. So very excited to give you the stage here to promote anything that you'd like. I know you're on a big speaking circuit here. You've got your book coming out, so I'd love to give the stage back to you.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that's top of mind is basically the same time that this broadcast started today. For tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking with Ben Callahan in the question. So it's a weekly series that he's had for the past year, speaking about design systems in general. And you could still apply to be a part of that. He's going to have that open until 4 p.m. today. So that's the next about 3 hours or 2 hours or so.
Awesome.
So you could definitely look on my socials for that, and I'll give you the socials in a minute.
Perfect.
But we're going to have a great conversation about that kind of stuff. And I suspect that much of that conversation may inform some of the parts of the book, because we're going to be talking about design token architecture. And I have some, let's say, hypotheses that I'm hoping to kind of suss out in this conversation. So certainly, if you are involved in the way that design tokens are distributed in your organization, or if you have any opinions about the way that design tokens should be architected, absolutely, you should be a part of the question this week. And again, that'll be tomorrow, again around this time. So that's super important. You can catch me at well, probably won't catch me necessarily, but you will be catching lots of design system experts at Clarity this year, which is going to be in a couple of weeks. So that's at clarityconf.com. And the fact that you won't be catching me is because I'm going to be running the AV. So I'm going to be basically the person who's going to be live streaming all that stuff and coordinating all the speakers and their interviews and all that kind of stuff. So wish me luck that I don't hit the wrong button at the wrong time. Then directly after that, I'll be at Converge in Brighton, UK. So I'm not going to be speaking there, but it's going to be my first time at Converge. And those are the folks at Zero Height that are putting on that thing on a regular basis.
Awesome.
And I'm looking forward to speaking to all of my, or just having discussions, of course, with all of the folks that are on that side of the pond. Really looking forward to that. And then the final thing that I got queued up, at least just again in the next month or so, is Smashing. So Smashing Conf in New York City is going to be the first week of October. I've gone to Smashing Conf in New York every time that they've been to New York. I love that conference. They really do a really amazing job at making it inclusive, having people ask questions on a big, huge doc, adding, notes in there. The speakers are incredible. And really a good sense of community in there. So really highly recommend, if you're going to be anywhere in the New York area, to go to Smashing Conf, certainly. And of course, I'll see you there if you're there. And then past that, I'm obviously all over the socials. You could find me at Donnie D'Amato on the internet. I'm literally first 10 pages of Google if you search for that name. So any one of those things you can catch me at. And a big shout out, of course, to the Design System Slack, where there's 20,000 members strong that are talking every single day about the stuff that we do in our practice. There's jobs there every single day. If you're looking for a job in design systems, someone's posting there in particular. So definitely take a look in there. And if you need an invite, you could totally ping me. I'll get you in.
That's awesome.
And otherwise, thanks, Nico. This has been cool.
Thank you very much. The Slack one, is that the one that was started by Gina, or is
That's correct?
That's awesome.
That's
fantastic. Yeah. Well, Donnie, you are establishing yourself as the #1 Donnie D'Amato across all of the internet. So thank you very, very much. We're honored to have you here on our show. And thank you so much again for everybody tuning in. We try to have these shows every Wednesday. So if you are interested in tuning in again, we'll be live around this time next week and all the weeks following. And if you're interested, we also have all the past episodes on our website too. So feel free to catch up with the community, hear what they all think about all of these fun topics. But until then, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. And Donnie, we will talk to you soon. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and we will see y'all later. Bye-bye.